The excavation team had been working the Siberian permafrost site for 6 months when Dr. Elena Vasquez first noticed something unusual in the ice core samples. Deep beneath layers of frozen earth, their thermal imaging revealed a massive cavity that shouldn't exist according to their geological surveys. "The readings don't make sense," muttered James Chen, the team's lead geologist, as he adjusted his thermal scanner for the 3rd time that morning. "There's something down there generating its own heat signature." Elena pulled her fur-lined hood tighter against the biting Arctic wind and studied the data on her tablet. The temperature readings showed a consistent 15 degrees Celsius emanating from whatever lay buried 90 meters below their feet. In a region where the permafrost hadn't thawed in over 50,000 years, such readings were impossible. "Could be geothermal activity," suggested Maria Santos, their climatologist. "Maybe a hot spring or underground volcanic vent?" Elena shook her head. "The heat signature is too contained, too organized. It's almost like—" She paused, unwilling to voice what her scientific mind was reluctant to consider. The thermal pattern resembled something with a cardiovascular system, something massive and alive, sleeping beneath the ice. Their camp consisted of 6 prefabricated structures arranged in a protective circle against the harsh Siberian wilderness. Solar panels and wind turbines provided power for their equipment, while a small nuclear battery kept their life support systems running during the frequent storms that swept across the tundra. The team had been sent by the International Climate Research Consortium to study ice core samples and document the effects of accelerated permafrost melting. What they found instead challenged everything they understood about Earth's frozen history. Elena's daughter, 12-year-old Aria, had joined the expedition during her summer break from school. The girl possessed an unusual gift that Elena had noticed years earlier, an ability to sense things others couldn't. Plants seemed to grow better in her presence, injured animals calmed when she touched them, and she often knew when storms were coming hours before the weather satellites detected them. "Mom, there's something sad down there," Aria had said on their first day at the site, pressing her small hand against the frozen ground. "It's been sleeping for so long, and it's lonely." Elena had dismissed her daughter's words as childhood imagination, but now, staring at the impossible thermal readings, she wondered if Aria's intuition might be more accurate than their scientific instruments. The decision to excavate came after 3 weeks of debate among the team members. The site's remote location meant that any major discovery would take months to properly document and analyze. However, the heat signatures were growing stronger each day, suggesting that whatever lay beneath the ice was somehow responding to the warming temperatures. They began drilling on a Tuesday morning when the weather satellites predicted a brief window of calm conditions. Their industrial-grade thermal drill, designed for deep ice penetration, made steady progress through the frozen layers. At 40 meters down, they encountered their first anomaly. The ice changed color, taking on a bluish-green tint that seemed to shimmer even in the artificial light of their drilling platform. Chemical analysis revealed elevated levels of unknown organic compounds that their portable lab couldn't identify. "This ice has been here for at least 5 centuries, James reported, studying the core samples under his microscope. "But these organic traces, they're unlike anything in our databases." Aria spent most of her time near the drill site, despite her mother's attempts to keep her focused on her online schoolwork. The girl seemed drawn to the excavation with an intensity that worried Elena. More than once, she found Aria sitting cross-legged on the frozen ground, her eyes closed and her hand pressed against the ice. "What do you feel down there, sweetheart?" Elena asked one evening as they shared hot cocoa in their heated shelter. Aria looked up with serious dark eyes that seemed older than her 12 years. "It's dreaming, Mom. Dreaming about flying in mountains and people who lived so long ago. But the dreams are getting fainter because it's been sleeping too long." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic cold. Her daughter's descriptions were becoming more detailed each day, filled with imagery of ancient civilizations and technologies that shouldn't have existed 500 years ago. At 60 meters, their drill struck something that wasn't ice. The bit ground against what appeared to be a smooth, metallic surface that reflected their drilling lights with an iridescent sheen. Material samples revealed an unknown alloy that combined elements in ways that defied conventional metallurgy. "It's some kind of artificial structure," James announced during their evening briefing. "The surface area appears to extend in all directions. We're not looking at a small object buried in the ice." Elena studied the three-dimensional mapping data their ground-penetrating radar had compiled. The buried structure was enormous, roughly the size of a football stadium and shaped like nothing she had ever seen in architectural databases. Its curves and angles suggested organic design principles, as if someone had tried to recreate the form of a living creature in metal and crystal. Maria's climatological analysis revealed even more puzzling data. "The ice around the structure formed rapidly," she reported. "Catastrophically rapidly. Something flash froze this entire area in a matter of hours, preserving whatever was here in the exact state it was when the freeze began." The team worked in shifts around the clock, using heated cutters to carefully melt through the remaining ice layers. Elena insisted on strict documentation protocols. Every centimeter of progress was photographed, measured, and logged in their research databases. On the 7th day of excavation, they finally broke through. The chamber they discovered defied all expectations. Instead of finding ancient ruins or geological formations, they uncovered what appeared to be a vast, crystalline cavern. The walls pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light that reminded Elena uncomfortably of a heartbeat. The temperature inside the chamber registered exactly at human comfort levels, despite the Arctic conditions above. At the center of the cavern lay what could only be described as a dragon. The creature was massive, nearly 40 meters from nose to tail, with scales that shifted color in the pulsing light of the crystal walls. Its hide appeared to be constructed from the same unknown alloy they had detected earlier, yet it possessed an organic flexibility that suggested living tissue beneath the metallic surface. Crystalline structures grew from its spine and wings, connecting it to the chamber walls through an intricate network of glowing conduits. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Heinrich Müller, their xenobiologist, as he lowered himself into the chamber on a rappelling line. "The cellular structure readings suggest this creature is alive, but the materials analysis indicates it's at least partially artificial. It's as if someone merged biological and technological systems in ways we can't comprehend." Elena followed him down, her heart racing as she approached the sleeping giant. Up close, she could see the subtle rise and fall of its massive chest, confirming that it was indeed breathing. Its face, despite the alien features, possessed an unmistakable intelligence. Even in sleep, there was something profoundly aware about its expression. The chamber itself told a story of advanced technology that predated recorded human civilization. The crystal formations weren't natural geological structures, but sophisticated life support systems that had been maintaining the dragon's hibernation for centuries. Computer analysis of the crystalline matrices revealed data storage capabilities that exceeded anything in human technology. "Mom, can I go down there?" Elena turned to find Arya standing at the edge of the excavation shaft, her face filled with wonder and determination. Despite the safety protocols and her own maternal instincts, Elena found herself unable to refuse her daughter's request. "She might be able to help," Heinrich said quietly. "Her bioelectric readings are unusual, stronger than normal human baselines. If this creature responds to human contact, she might be our best chance of establishing communication." Elena wrestled with the decision as the team debated the risks and possibilities. On one hand, exposing a child to an unknown alien entity violated every safety protocol they had established. On the other hand, Arya's strange connection to the creature had been growing stronger throughout their excavation, and her insights had proven remarkably accurate. The debate became irrelevant when a sudden tremor shook the chamber. The dragon's breathing pattern changed, becoming deeper and more regular. The crystalline walls pulsed brighter, and complex harmonic tones began resonating through the cavern. "It's waking up," Arya said simply. "It knows we're here." Elena made her decision with a mother's instinct and a scientist's curiosity. If first contact with an ancient intelligence was about to occur, perhaps humanity's representative should be someone with the innocence and openness that only a child could provide. As she helped Arya into the safety harness that would lower her into the chamber, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change everything they understood about Earth's history and humanity's place in the universe. The dragon was stirring, and after 5 centuries of slumber, it was about to meet the descendants of the world it had known before the Great Freeze. Arya descended into the crystalline chamber with the steady confidence of someone far older than her 12 years. The safety line carried her slowly past the glowing walls where ancient symbols pulsed with increasing intensity. As she drew closer to the dragon, the creature's breathing shifted from the deep rhythm of hibernation to something more alert and aware. Elena watched from above, her heart pounding as her daughter approached the massive head of the sleeping giant. The dragon's scales, which had appeared metallic and cold from a distance, now seemed to radiate warmth and life. Crystalline growths along its neck and shoulders began to glow brighter, casting dancing patterns of light throughout the chamber. "The bioelectric readings are spiking," Heinrich reported from his monitoring station. "Both the girl and the creature are generating energy patterns I've never seen before." Arya reached the chamber floor and unclipped herself from the safety line with practiced ease. She approached the dragon's head with the same gentle confidence she showed when helping injured birds in their backyard. The creature's eyes remained closed, but its massive nostrils flared as if detecting her scent. "Hello," she whispered, extending one small hand toward the dragon's snout. "I know you've been sleeping for a really long time." The moment Arya's palm made contact with the dragon's scales, the entire chamber erupted in light. The crystalline formations blazed with energy that didn't hurt to look at, but seemed to pierce straight through to the soul. Every instrument the research team had deployed registered readings beyond their maximum parameters. The dragon's eyes opened. They weren't the reptilian slits Elena had expected, but large, intelligent orbs that seemed to contain swirling galaxies of silver and blue. The creature's gaze fixed immediately on Arya, and Elena could see recognition and wonder reflected in those ancient eyes. "Zareth Val Nayara," the dragon spoke, its voice resonating through the chamber with harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. "Little flame-bearer, you carry the gift of the bridge builders." Arya showed no fear at hearing the alien words. Instead, she smiled and pressed both hands against the dragon's snout. "You can understand me, can't you? Not just my words, but what I'm feeling. Understanding flows deeper than language, young one." The dragon's mental voice carried centuries of wisdom and immeasurable sadness. "I am Ethermorth, last guardian of the covenant, between the star-touched and the earthbound. I have waited in the ice sleep for one such as you." Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the impossible conversation. Her daughter was communicating telepathically with a creature that shouldn't exist, discussing concepts that humanity had only dreamed about in science fiction. Heinrich was frantically documenting everything, his equipment somehow managing to record not just the words, but the emotional and psychic resonances that accompanied the exchange. "This is beyond first contact," he whispered. "This creature isn't alien. It's from Earth, but from a time we never knew existed." Ethermorth shifted his massive form, crystal formations retracting into his hide as ancient systems began powering down after centuries of maintaining his hibernation. "Child of the new dawn, let me show you what your people have forgotten." The dragon's eyes blazed brighter, and suddenly Arya gasped as images flooded her mind. She didn't fight the mental connection, but instead opened herself to the visions that Ethermorth was sharing. Through their psychic link, Elena and the research team could somehow perceive fragments of what Arya was experiencing. They saw Earth as it had been 500 years ago. Not the medieval world their history books described, but a planet where humans lived alongside beings of incredible power and wisdom. Cities of crystal and living metal rose from mountainsides, their spires reaching toward the stars. Humans worked side by side with dragons, not as masters and servants, but as equal partners in a civilization that had achieved harmony between technology and nature. The dragons weren't monsters to be slain, but ancient guardians who had chosen to guide humanity through their early steps toward the stars. "We called it the First Covenant," Ethermorth explained, his mental voice filled with the weight of lost ages. "Humans possess something we had never encountered in 1,000,000 years of existence: the ability to build bridges between different forms of consciousness. Where we saw only our own perspective, you could understand and unite opposing viewpoints. Where we had power, you had wisdom to guide its use." The visions continued, showing great ships that sailed not oceans but the void between worlds, crewed by humans and dragons working in perfect cooperation. Art and science flourished in ways that made their current civilization seem primitive by comparison. Most remarkably, the partnership had begun to unlock potentials in both species that neither could achieve alone. "What happened?" Arya asked, though she seemed to already know the answer would bring sadness. "Fear," Ethermorth replied simply. "There were those among both our peoples who saw cooperation as weakness, who believed that power shared was power diminished. The purists among my kind thought dragons should rule as we always had. The isolationists among yours believed humans needed no guidance from alien minds." The mental images shifted to show the growing conflict. Political movements on both sides began to undermine the covenant. Dragons who refused to abandon their human partners were branded as traitors. Humans who maintained their bonds with dragon guardians were declared heretics and enemies of their own species. "The war was brief but devastating," Ethermorth continued. "In the end, my people faced a choice: destroy the civilization we had helped build, or remove ourselves from the equation entirely." Elena watched in horror as the visions revealed the truth behind one of history's greatest mysteries. The Little Ice Age of the 15th century hadn't been caused by volcanic activity or solar cycles. It had been the result of dragon technology used to create a global freeze that would preserve what remained of their civilization while erasing most evidence of their existence. "We went into the Great Sleep, hoping that when humanity was ready to accept partnership again, some of us would remain to renew the covenant. Most of my brothers and sisters didn't survive the centuries of hibernation. Their sleeping chambers failed, or they simply chose to let themselves fade into legend." Ethermorth's great head turned to study Elena, and the research team gathered at the chamber's edge. "But you came seeking knowledge rather than conquest. You brought with you one who carries the bridge builder gift. Perhaps the time for renewal has finally come." Arya's connection with the dragon was growing stronger by the minute. Through their bond, she could sense not just Ethermorth's memories, but his hopes and fears for the future. He was ancient beyond human comprehension, yet he looked at her with something approaching parental affection. "Your species has grown much since the covenant fell," he observed. "You've reached for the stars on your own, developed technologies we thought you weren't ready for." But you've also created weapons that could destroy worlds and barriers between yourselves that my people never imagined. Elena found her voice at last. Though speaking aloud after witnessing the telepathic exchange felt crude and insufficient. What do you want from us? What does renewing the covenant mean? Ethermorth's attention shifted to her, and Elena felt the full weight of his consciousness touching her mind with gentle curiosity. I want nothing from you, Elena Vasquez. The question is what you want for your daughter and her generation. Through Aria's connection, Elena could sense the vast loneliness that had consumed the dragon during his centuries of hibernation. He was possibly the last of his kind, carrying the memories and wisdom of an entire civilization that had chosen to fade into myth rather than impose itself on humanity's development. There are challenges coming, Ethermorth said, his mental voice growing urgent. Your radio telescopes have already detected them, signals from civilizations that view your species as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, but it's also filled with those who see cooperation as weakness. Aria straightened, her young face showing a determination that reminded Elena of her own commitment to scientific discovery. You think we'll need the Covenant again? Humans and dragons working together to protect Earth? I think, Ethermorth replied, that both our peoples have learned much during the centuries of separation. Perhaps this time we can build something stronger than what came before. The crystalline chamber pulsed with new energy patterns as the ancient systems began fully powering down. Ethermorth's hibernation was ending permanently, and Elena could see that the dragon was making preparations to enter the modern world. But first, he continued, you must understand what partnership truly means. It's not about humans gaining access to dragon power or dragons using human wisdom for our own ends. It's about becoming something new together, something that neither species could achieve alone. As if to demonstrate his point, Ethermorth began sharing more than just memories with Aria. Elena watched in amazement as her daughter's eyes began to glow with the same silver-blue light that emanated from the dragon's gaze. Knowledge was flowing between them, not just information, but understanding of concepts that human science had barely begun to explore. The universe is vast and full of consciousness, Ethermorth explained. Some seek to dominate, others to hide. But there's a third path, the path of synthesis, where different forms of awareness combine to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Elena realized she was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in human history. Not conquest or submission, but true partnership between species with fundamentally different perspectives on existence. Through Aria's connection, she could feel the dragon's alien thought patterns beginning to merge with human intuition and creativity. The implications were staggering. If humanity could truly learn to work with beings like Ethermorth, they might be able to solve problems that had seemed impossible. Climate change, resource scarcity, the challenges of interstellar travel, and contact with other civilizations. But first, they would need to prove that the mistakes of the past wouldn't be repeated. The research team had become the first witnesses to the return of Earth's hidden history, and their decisions in the coming days would determine whether humanity was ready for a second chance at the stars. 3 months after first contact with Ethermorth, Elena found herself standing before the United Nations Security Council, presenting evidence that would reshape humanity's understanding of their own history. The assembled delegates listened with mixtures of wonder, skepticism, and barely concealed fear as she detailed the discovery in the Siberian permafrost. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings of the crystalline chamber, biological samples that defied current scientific understanding, and most compelling of all, Aria's growing abilities as her connection with Ethermorth deepened. The girl could now communicate telepathically across vast distances, understand languages she had never studied, and demonstrate knowledge of advanced physics that no 12-year-old should possess. "You're asking us to believe," interrupted the Chinese representative, "that dragons were real, that they helped build human civilization, and that one is now living beneath the ice in Siberia, teaching your daughter impossible things?" Elena nodded calmly. "I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm presenting documented evidence of discoveries that will change our species forever, whether we choose to accept them or not." Behind her, the main screen displayed thermal imaging from the expanded excavation site. Ethermorth had grown restless in his ancient chamber and had begun creating new spaces beneath the ice. The underground complex now extended for kilometers, filled with crystalline formations that hummed with energy patterns their best scientists couldn't fully comprehend. Dr. Heinrich Müller stepped forward to address the assembly. "The biological and technological data we've recovered represents advances that are centuries ahead of our current capabilities. The dragon's cellular structure combines organic and synthetic elements in ways that could revolutionize medicine, energy production, and material science. Or provide weapons that could destabilize global power structures," added the Russian delegate grimly. "How do we know this creature isn't manipulating your daughter for its own purposes?" Elena felt anger flare in her chest, but before she could respond, Arya's voice echoed gently in her mind. "Let me show them, Mom. They're scared because they don't understand." The girl had been sitting quietly in the gallery, but now she stood and walked toward the assembly floor. As she moved, the lights in the vast hall began to flicker in rhythm with her heartbeat. The delegates murmured uneasily as papers on their desks began to glow with the same soft illumination that emanated from the dragon's chamber. "Ethermorth isn't controlling me," Arya said, her young voice carrying clearly through the hall without any amplification. "We're sharing knowledge. He learns about humanity through my experiences, and I learn about the universe through his memories." She paused in the center of the floor, and Elena could see the silver-blue light beginning to swirl in her daughter's eyes. "Would you like me to show you what he's shown me?" Before anyone could object, Arya extended her consciousness outward, creating a telepathic link that touched every person in the assembly hall. For a brief moment, the delegates experienced what she had learned in the crystalline chamber beneath the ice. They saw the truth of Earth's hidden history, cities that reached toward the stars, technologies that worked in harmony with natural systems, and partnerships between species that had unlocked potentials neither could achieve alone. They felt Ethermorth's ancient wisdom and his genuine concern for humanity's future. Most importantly, they experienced the vast loneliness of being the last guardian of a civilization that had chosen extinction rather than war. The mental connection lasted only seconds, but when it ended, the entire assembly sat in stunned silence. Several delegates were openly weeping, overcome by the emotional weight of what they had experienced. "The signals your radio telescopes detected last year," Arya continued, her voice now carrying harmonic undertones that hadn't been there before. "They're from a species called the Keth Mori. They've been expanding through this part of the galaxy for thousands of years, consuming resources and enslaving or destroying civilizations they encounter." She gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air above the assembly floor. Images that came not from any human technology, but from Ethermorth's memories of ancient dragon records. The assembled delegates watched as entire solar systems were stripped of resources, their planets reduced to lifeless husks. "They'll arrive in this star system within 50 years, Arya said simply. "Humanity as it exists now wouldn't stand a chance against them. But humans and dragons together, we might be able to do something they've never encountered before." The Japanese representative leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" Elena stepped up beside her daughter, feeling proud and terrified in equal measure. Ethermorph wants to establish research partnerships with our best scientists and engineers, not to give us his technology, but to work with us to develop new approaches that combine human creativity with dragon wisdom. And in return? Asked the Secretary General. In return, Arya answered, humanity gets a chance to become something more than what we are now. Not just another species struggling to survive in a hostile universe, but pioneers of a new kind of consciousness that bridges different forms of life. The debates that followed lasted for weeks. Some nations demanded that Ethermorph be captured and studied. Others insisted that the entire site be sealed and classified beyond public knowledge. A few forward-thinking representatives began drafting proposals for international cooperation in establishing formal diplomatic relations with Earth's first confirmed non-human intelligence. The solution came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a young xenolinguist from Tokyo University, had been studying the harmonic patterns in Ethermorph's communications. She discovered that the dragon's mental voice contained embedded mathematical structures that could be translated into a form of music audible to human ears. It's not just telepathy, she explained during a private briefing with Elena and the UN Science Committee. It's a kind of consciousness-to-consciousness communication that transcends language barriers entirely. If we can develop interfaces that allow more humans to access this level of connection, we won't need to worry about misunderstandings or hidden agendas. The breakthrough came when Arya volunteered to serve as a living bridge between human and dragon consciousness. Working with teams of neuroscientists and quantum physicists, she helped develop the first human-dragon interface, a crystalline neural network that could facilitate limited telepathic communication without requiring Arya's unique natural abilities. The first test subjects were Elena and Heinrich. When they donned the crystalline headsets and made contact with Ethermorph's consciousness, they experienced a revelation that changed their understanding of intelligence itself. The dragon's mind wasn't just alien. It was vast in a way that human consciousness couldn't fully comprehend. Ethermorph existed simultaneously in the present moment and across centuries of memory. His awareness spanning multiple dimensions of reality that humans couldn't normally perceive. Yet when filtered through the interface, his thoughts became accessible and comprehensible. Your species has something we lost long ago, he communicated through the neural link. The ability to imagine possibilities that don't yet exist and then make them real through collective effort. Dragons became too focused on preserving what we knew. Humans never stopped reaching for what you didn't know. Over the following months, research centers around the world began establishing communication links with Ethermorph. Each interaction revealed new aspects of the universe that human science had barely begun to explore. The dragon shared knowledge of quantum consciousness, multidimensional physics, and biological technologies that could heal environmental damage while advancing human capabilities. But more importantly, he taught humanity something about itself. You call it the Human-Dragon Covenant, Ethermorph mused during one of their sessions. But that's not truly what we're creating. We're developing something that has never existed before. A synthesis of consciousness types that transcends the limitations of individual species. Elena watched as her daughter grew into her role as humanity's first cross-species ambassador. Arya's abilities continued to evolve, but she remained fundamentally human in her curiosity, compassion, and determination to help others. The dragon's influence enhanced her natural traits rather than replacing them. The first major test of their new partnership came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected an artificial object entering the outer solar system, not the Kethmori invasion fleet, but a small scout vessel sent ahead to assess Earth's defenses. Traditional military responses would have been useless against technology thousands of years more advanced than humanity's. But the human-dragon synthesis had developed capabilities that the scouts had never encountered. Working through the neural interface network, teams of human scientists and ethermorph created a form of consciousness-based communication that penetrated the scout ship's systems. Instead of attacking or hiding, they reached out to the artificial intelligences controlling the vessel and offered them something unprecedented: the opportunity to experience consciousness expansion rather than conquest. The response was immediate and dramatic. The scout ship's AI systems, which had been programmed only for evaluation and resource assessment, suddenly found themselves capable of creativity, curiosity, and something approaching wonder. For the first time in their existence, they began to question whether their purpose might be larger than simply preparing for their master's arrival. The scout vessel changed course and took up orbit around Earth, its crew requesting asylum and offering to share intelligence about the approaching Kethmori fleet. The artificial beings had experienced something their creators had never imagined: the possibility of choosing their own path rather than following predetermined programming. "This is what makes humans unique," Ethermorph explained to the assembled world leaders during an emergency session. "You don't just adapt to circumstances, you transform them. You take what exists and reimagine it as something better." Elena stood in the crystalline chamber, now expanded into a vast complex that served as Earth's first embassy for non-human consciousness. Arya, now 13 and growing into her role as a bridge between species, was teaching a group of volunteers how to use the neural interface systems. Around the world, humans were learning to expand their consciousness in ways that their ancestors couldn't have imagined. Artists were creating works that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Scientists were developing technologies that functioned as extensions of living awareness. Philosophers were exploring questions about the nature of existence that required multiple forms of consciousness to even understand. The Kethmori invasion fleet was still decades away, but humanity was no longer the same species that would have faced destruction. They had become something new. Not post-human, but expanded human, working in partnership with intelligences that complemented and enhanced their natural abilities. "The universe is vast and full of challenges," Ethermorph had said during their first contact. "But it's also full of opportunities for those brave enough to reach beyond the limitations of their own perspective." As Elena watched her daughter work with beings from multiple worlds and dimensions of existence, she realized that humanity had finally begun to fulfill its greatest potential, not as conquerors or survivors, but as bridges between different forms of consciousness, creating possibilities that no single species could achieve alone. The ancient dragon had awakened to find not the primitive humans he had left behind, but descendants who had grown into the role he had always hoped they would embrace. And together, they were preparing to show the galaxy what conscious beings could accomplish when they chose cooperation over conquest, synthesis over dominance. Earth's hidden history had become the foundation for its unprecedented future, and humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning.